We are now starting our panel. We are welcoming all the speakers. I will just name the speakers at this moment. We are going to have, I will rename and call them again as they are speaking. I'm very thankful. We are very in deep gratitude to accept our invitation. All of you, Dr. Nafissatou Diop from UNFPA, Lopa Banerjee from UN Women, Reverend Lilana Casper from the Lutheran Church of Southern Africa and representing the ACT Gender Justice Corps of Africa, Reverend Dora Arce Valentin from the seminary of the Evangelical Seminary in Matanzas in Cuba. She unfortunately has some connections problem and we are waiting at some point to bring her in. And we have also to say some closing remarks, Dr. Josephine Sandquist from CIDA, our partner agency, who is in partnership with our Gender Act program. To start our program now, we are inviting our General Secretary, Rudelmar Bueno de Faria, to say some words of welcoming and opening this moment. Rudelmar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are located right now. As Elaine mentioned, my name is Rudelmar Bueno de Faria. I'm the General Secretary of the ACT Alliance, and ACT Alliance stands for Action by Churches Together. I want to welcome all of you in this event called the Other Pandemic, Action to Address and Prevent Gender-Based Violence. And this event is part of the collaborative work of the ACT Alliance with different stakeholders. And it will focus on the role of the faith-based actors and organizations in contributing to gender equality. It's notorious for all of you how much the COVID-19 pandemic has affected many sectors and how that has exacerbated also sexual and gender-based violence in other pre-existing gender inequalities in all corners of the planet. We know that many faith actors are in the front lines to address the crisis, but we also know that many of them are not doing enough to advocate and call for renewed responses that protect women's rights and the achievement of the gender equality. There is a lot of work to do still among faith actors and organizations. And without urgent socio-economic responses, global injustices will escalate. We know that, jeopardizing lives and livelihoods for years to come. And furthermore, the crisis can potentially ignite or exacerbate grievances, mistrust, and sense of injustice over access to health, services, decent jobs, and livelihoods. And also drive conflicts that could undermine development, peace, and social cohesion. In this context, women and girls face disproportionate impacts of the pandemic, and with far-reaching consequences that are further amplified by the fragility, conflicts, and emergencies that we are facing nowadays. Even before the COVID-19, we know that the domestic violence was already one of the greatest human rights violations. As the pandemic continues in all parts of the world, the number of cases is likely to grow, with multiple impacts on women's well-being, their sexual and reproductive health, their mental health, and also their ability to participate and lead in the recovery of our societies and economies. And in addition, we know that achieved gains for women's rights are also under increasing threats. We know how governments, how conservative groups are attacking those that want to promote gender equality and inclusion or the promotion of sexual and reproductive health and rights. The speakers in these events will certainly address these issues and also the degrees of the gender inequality in the context of the pandemic. But for me, I think it's very important that we find concrete ways to move on, not just staying in the identification of the problems and how women and girls and all the dimensions of genders are under attack. We need to be part of a solution, and that implies, of course, to be bold and to take bold decisions in actions to revert this unacceptable situation of sexual and gender-based violence. I hope that this event can help us to assess the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on societies, economy, but mainly on vulnerable groups in order to inform us and tailor our responses as faith-based organizations, as governments or the partners, the multilateral system, to recover from the crisis and to ensure that no one is left behind. In this context, we have to work for a paradigm of life, which challenges dominant patterns and systems that we know that have formed our minds and societies, such as or like patriarchate. And to address the challenges that we have identified and will identify here as well, our actions must be bound to a philosophy that defines the best way for humans to live, and to a results-based approach that works for a social and economic justice that is rooted in ethics, in philosophy, science, religion, but mainly dignity and values that affirms that all human beings are inherently worthy. In this context, we need to link our actions to the wider discussions on the gender issues. We want to see all people free from cultural and interpersonal systems of patronage and oppression, and from violence and repression based on gender. We want to articulate a position to build on and also expand current work to reduce inequality and to promote gender justice. ACT Alliance envisions a world that respects and also acknowledges all races, genders that before were underrepresented in political, social, and also development spheres. And ACT believes in an end to gender inequality and injustice, gender-based discrimination and violence, and also in closing the gender gap and addressing unequal power relationships for the promotion of human dignity for all. That is ACT's commitment to achieving gender justice as a value, equality between women and men, and as an unalienable human rights. And because we know that all are made in the image of God and have equal worth and value. So in these discussions that we will have today in this event, I wish you fruitful discussions and recommend that we make from gatherings like that a practical tool to mobilize people in all countries and regions, communities, to make real changes. We can stop gender-based violence, and that is our responsibility together with a multi-stakeholder movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rudelmar. Thank you for your opening words. Thank you for the encouragement to continue the reflection and the discussions. I think it's a very important organizational attitude from ACT Alliance General Secretary to motivate and to opening that kind of discussion. We have a role as faith-based organizations to address, to overcome, to make sure that life with dignity for all people, all genders are in place, are possible. This is our main motivation. Thank you, Rudelmar. We call now to our sister and friend, Reverend Lilana Casper. She is from Southern Africa Lutheran Church, ELCSA, Evangelical Lutheran Church of Southern Africa. She's part of the Gender COP in the community of practice in Africa, or in the community of practice of ACT. More of her bio CV we will have available on our website that Daniela will put in our chat, and you can access more. Lilana is joining us from Southern Africa, and we welcome you. We start with this reflection about the role of faith. What is the role of faith leaders in addressing and overcoming violence against women, sexual and gender-based violence? Lilana, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I want to start by saying all protocol observed. I am extremely humble and grateful for the opportunity to be able to share with you on this very important topic this afternoon. I think we cannot overemphasize it enough that, yes, in this time that we find ourselves, we definitely are dealing with two pandemics. The one being the COVID-19 pandemic that has came with its own challenges for families and especially for women. We have found in South Africa that during the lockdown, there has been a dramatic increase in the number of people calling and reaching out to the call line for people who are going through gender-based violence and who are experiencing domestic violence in particular. So the second pandemic that we are dealing with in our time is definitely the pandemic of gender-based violence. And I think for me, what is important for us to reflect on, especially if we are preparing for the 16 days of activism, it's number one, the issue of education. I think we cannot overemphasize how important education is as part of awareness creation. Last week, I was conducting a training in the Durban area in KwaZulu-Natal for faith leaders. And it was quite shocking to find that we have faith leaders who are not even sure really what all the forms of violence are. They know the basic forms of violence, but there are so many other forms of violence that they have never thought of, that they've never considered. And it is just once again highlighted how important it is that we do educate people on the simple things that we sometimes assume that people should know. So education must really be the basis of any campaign that we are going to have. Educating people around the issues of violence and what gender-based violence is, because sometimes people are being abused and they don't even know. And that is why they cannot reach out, they cannot say anything because they are not even sure of what is happening to them. So education and awareness creation remains for me two of the fundamental things that we have to embark on and look at and continuously develop. It is also, I think, important that we make available resources for people to use, resources that faith leaders can use within the communities, within their different churches. Because we have the people available to us. Faith leaders are the people that are trusted in any community. Faith leaders are the ones that people will come to whenever they are in trouble and whenever they need to reach out. So empowering them and equipping them and making sure that they have resources that they can use, resources that they can equip and empower and teach and create awareness within the community. Also using all social media platforms to reach out to get a message across and to make sure that we educate our people and raise awareness. The other point I think that is very important is networking with civil society. Faith-based organizations always try and focus everyone in their own corner. As the Lutherans, we want to be seen doing something. As the Anglicans, we want to be seen doing something. As the Catholics, we want to be seen doing something. But what is going to be so important for us is to learn to network, to come together, to partner together, because then we have a bigger voice, we have a bigger platform of people then we can reach, instead of just speaking from our own little corners, in our own little communities, in our own little churches. It is important then as the faith-based community that we also work with civil society. Within the next 2 weeks, as they are preparing for the 16 days of activism, in Durban, in KZN, they are going to have a t-shirt project. And I just briefly want to tell you about this, that there will be different colored t-shirts depending on the type of violence that you want to highlight. And anybody can come, you take a t-shirt, you write a message on it, and these t-shirts are going to be hanged on a washing line that is going to be around the city hall in Durban. And these t-shirts are going to carry the message. And for me, that is such a powerful event. It's such a powerful opportunity for us to come together as faith-based organizations and civil society to highlight the plight. It is something practical that we can do. Another thing I think that is very important as we prepare for the 16 days of activism is to ensure that we have different programs for every day. I think sometimes this is the one thing that I lack, that we want to highlight the 16 days. Everybody's excited about the 16 days. But sometimes I think there's very little, or at least in my context, I find sometimes that there's very little emphasis being laid on the content of the 16 days. And it would really help if we can develop a program for the 16 days. For every single day of the 16 days, there must be something that we are going to focus on. One day we can focus on men, one day we can focus on women, one day we can focus on youth, one day we can focus on the family, one day we can focus on an intergenerational approach, have discussions, in a small way, but try and make sure that every day there is something happening. Even if it is praying, a special prayer for every day that we send out, even if it is a short message of encouragement, a short message to say, what is violence? A short message to say, why must we break the silence? A short message to say, how must we break the silence? I think that would go a long way in strengthening the idea of the 16 days of activism, making it truly concrete and practical in a way that everybody can participate. During the lockdown, we have not been able to have services, but we have used Facebook, we have used WhatsApp, we have used Instagram, we have used so many other platforms in trying to reach out. And I think that has opened the door for us, especially during the 16 days, to say that every morning we can send out a prayer, we can send out a message of hope, we can send out a message of encouragement, we can decide on one issue that we want to highlight and focus on for that particular day. Another thing or another way that faith-based communities can truly get involved in reducing the incidences of gender-based violence, for me, it's the issue of supporting survivors. I think many times we talk a lot in church, but number one, we don't preach enough about gender-based violence. We don't preach enough from the pulpit about what it is. We are not condemning it enough. We are not emphasizing enough that it is a human rights violation. And that is probably the most powerful tool we have, is the liturgy, is the sermon, is the services that we have. That is then how we reach and convict people every single Sunday about their faith. But yes, there's very powerful resource that we have as the faith-based community. We do not use it to preach and speak and teach enough on the issue of gender-based violence. And reaching out to the survivors is so important, because sometimes I may be abused, but I have no idea where to go. I don't have the energy. I don't have the voice. I am confused. I am hurt. I am angry. And I need somebody who can walk and journey with me. So we need to look at a program of saying, how do we accompany, how do we walk with survivors of gender-based violence? How do we speak with them, not for them? We don't act on their behalf, we don't speak on their behalf, but we act with them, we speak with them, we journey with them, and we empower them to do what they want to do. One of the very important campaigns that we had started or embarked on was the idea of a green door campaign, where in every community there is literally a green door. But it is a place of safety. It can be a church, it can be anybody in the community's house who's willing to create a safe space, so that if during the night or any time during the day you are being abused or you are beaten up or you need to run away and you don't know where to go, that you, when you see the green door, that is a place that you can run to. And from the green door, you will then be linked with other service providers. So what is important, I think, for us as the faith-based community is to also set up first responder programs in our congregations and in our parishes and in our communities. Let everybody know who is a first responder. Provide basic training for first responders on what do you do when somebody comes to you and say, I am abused, I am in a difficult situation, I think I'm going to be killed, or I think my life is in danger. So first responder programs, it's a practical way that we can reach out to people in the community and have information flow. And then lastly, as I conclude, I would want to say also the issue of developing a database. It's so important to know what are the service providers that are available in the community, so that if anybody should approach you, you are able to link survivors with organizations or service providers that are available. So for this afternoon, this would just be the few ideas that I would put on the table for us for a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Lilana. Thank you so much for so many good ideas how faith leaders, faith communities can contribute, can address, can overcome, can be an instrument where women and men can search for safe and good, healthy relationships. Thank you so much to name some of these opportunities, some of these spaces like preaching, using the liturgy, using the sermon, connecting with civil society, connecting with every space that can be used to build safe spaces for women and for men, and for women to feel that life can be a safe space for them. Church can be a safe space for them. We are asking now, we are calling now to the interaction with UN spaces. The first UN platform and the body that we are calling to have a dialogue with is with UNFPA. We have invited Dr. Nafissatou Diop. She is the Gender and Human Rights branch from UNFPA. And we are asking and inviting Dr. Diop to have a conversatorio, a conversation with us in this open space. How can we collaborate? How can we search for opportunities, and how can we overcome challenges in collaboration with civil society, UN spaces, and faith-based organization? Dr. Diop, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes, and I invite all people to continue to ask questions in the chat. Thank you, Dr. Diop, to be with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for this important conversation today. I would like to really greet all the previous speakers, and you know, their intervention were really powerful. And I would like really to join my voice and for what they have articulated so well. I don't know if I really have to add more on that, but it is a really important issue that we have today. And for us as UNFPA, this is really, you know, an important reflection. Because we have an evolving relationship with faith-based organization for so many years, I will say decades of relationship. I would maybe start by saying that when engaging as a multilateral organization, it is important to ask, you know, the one big question: who is not at the table? So who is not at the table for us is actually, we don't want faith-based organization to not be at the table of discussion, to not be at the table of action, to not be in, you know, all the spaces with us, you know, from the design to the evaluation process. Because we know that faith-based organization, particularly in the area of sexual and reproductive health, are providing about 75% of the services and service delivery for sexual and reproductive health issue. And so that means that we are, it's a group that have to be at the table, from the beginning of any discussion, any strategic plan. I just want to say that actually in 1970s, when UNFPA leadership asked that critical question on who is not at the table, the answer, of course, led, for example, to the creation of a Center for Population Studies in the heart of the Sunni Islamic world's largest and oldest university, mosque and center of Muslim jurisprudence, Al-Azhar University, that based in Cairo. So that relationship started with that university, and for decades, and is still going on for all the different issues and thematic of our mandate to push maternal health, to push adolescent rights and access to services, to push family planning, to push and to end the gender-based violence. And as you know, UNFPA has those 3 transformative results: 0 unmet need for family planning, 0 maternal preventable deaths, and 0 gender-based violence and harmful practices. And that relationship and partnership with faith-based organization is key for all those 3 transformative results. So I would like to say that in doing this kind of exercise, we have about 120 country offices of UNFPA who are working with faith-based organization entities, and of any type and any form and any ideology, I should say, based, of course, on the particular context and those and what is available and who are those influential groups in a given country. So I just want also to raise the fact that the United Nations Interagency Task Force on Religion and Development was established in 2010, and UNFPA experience in religious outreach positioned it to coordinate all the activity of the first interagency mechanism created in the UN system to simultaneously learn and inform policy making around the intersection of religion, development, peace, and security and humanitarian response. So this legacy implies a mutual moral, political, as well as financial accountability. And with the actors of this interagency forum, it also means that us as UNFPA, we are well placed to advise within the space of the UN system on the imperative of holding religious actors, faith-based organizations, sister UN agency alike accountable to the realization of the full human rights spectrum, including in the context of COVID-19. So I would like to really also put on the table the fact that we have been strengthening the interreligious and intercultural dialogue around some of the critical mandates of our mandate in the area of sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, advocating for all couples and individuals to have the basic right to decide freely and responsible the number of spacing of the children, and to have the information, education, and means to do so. And of course, to support what we are talking about today, efforts toward eliminating gender-based violence and addressing harmful practices. I just want to raise maybe some challenges that we are facing. And the main challenge maybe will be to start by, the main challenge or hindrance to working collaboratively with faith-based organizations is a lack of religious literacy among multilateral organizations. That is also not having a good knowledge or understanding of the role of the religious and faith organization in social, political, economic, and financial realities. So one of the lessons we have learned is to engage, of course, this faith-based organization and religious organization as more than a part of culture or way of life, but as players in their own rights in development spaces. And in so doing, we have learned the importance of religious literacy. I just want to raise another challenge, which is not having a clear directive on how multilateral reach to engage with FBOs. This organizational lack of clarity translates to ad hoc outreach to religious representatives and communities, and ad hoc does not build trust. And trust is critical, especially for community engagement, to respond to key social needs. So for us, engaging faith actors require a long-term commitment, good analysis, and finding the right entry. One such entry point is knowing that religious and faith leaders believe in their faith more. So if we do not speak their language, they will have their doubts. Not respecting religious belief is an interest also. Overcoming this often requires partnering for longer term or diverse issue of mutual values. I just want to maybe talk about opportunities now. And this is true that, you know, the Secretary General, GBV, gender-based violence, political strategy, is really giving us a huge opportunity. It has been, you know, with UN Women and with other UN agencies, you know, a very, you know, cohesive group of UN agencies coming together under the leadership of the Deputy Secretary General at the highest level of our, you know, of our agencies, to decide that we really need that moment, you know, that push. And of course, one of the first group that were, you know, identified as a strong partner is faith-based organization. So in the strategy, we mentioned that it will be important to create that dialogue and that stronger partnership with faith-based organization at global level, but also at regional level, at country level. And we are currently working together, all the UN agencies, to really try to organize ourselves and deliver on that aspect. I just want to add that another really opportunity for us is the fact that, as I mentioned, faith-based organization facilities often serve remote and rural areas where governments have the greatest difficulty in attracting and retaining health workers. And this is an important component because the essential package of services in response to gender-based violence, you know, need to reach out to all the remote area and rural areas. We are working also with UN Women particularly for a few years now to really have that integrated package of essential services for gender-based violence, you know, integrated international responses. And COVID, of course, that just hit us this year was the biggest test for us. And we have seen the difference between countries where, you know, we have made progress on the integration of the essential package of service for gender-based violence, and those where we have not been able to make progress. The response, you know, and you know, within the social economic framework, the response, you know, and the integration of GBV within the national COVID response has been, you know, very different, you know, based on that experience. So that tells us that we need really to continue and use more actually this opportunity of COVID and the data that are coming out now to bring the countries and the government, you know, to the realization that an essential package of service for GBV, gender-based violence, both prevention, protection, response, and support to survivors, etc., need really to be integrated. And for us, the faith-based organization, crucial into helping in doing that. The shelters, we have seen the shelters that were full and not and no more space. And so, on the field, some of the group, I can remember again in Ethiopia, for example, where 30 women with their children stay about 1 month in a police station. And you can imagine the police station is really not a space for family like that, but because shelters were full. And actually, this is a faith-based organization that opened a new shelter with our support, to host and to give, and to support those families with their children who run out of their house because of the abuser and they couldn't stay there. So those are just some examples that really are so important. And as opportunity, I think that COVID is helping us and giving us that opportunity today to organize and have a well-structured system to respond to key social, key social needs like gender-based violence. So members of FBO networks, provide a significant amount of, as I said, of services and all. In most of the countries, 70% of nursing, of midwifery, response. In other countries like Tanzania, Zambia, they're providing like 30%, 55% of it. So those statistics are really, we know that they're important, and we want to continue, partnering with them. I just want to mention one interesting example in Indonesia with a network of Christian faith-based humanitarian organization that strengthen the local church in disaster risk reduction, in increasing community resilience to natural disaster such as floods, earthquakes, and tsunami. And so those are really, strong action that we are seeing, from faith-based organization, we are support. So for us now that we are talking about more humanitarian development, peace, nexus, about community resilience and building those resilience and all, we really need to continue strengthen our response and our partnership. So I think that I will just stop there and say that we really need and want to engage our top leadership. And as I told you, the gender-based violence political strategy is an opportunity. We need theological reflections and declaration, from faith-based organization, and also that interface and intrafaith conversation with selected scholars, need to happen. And we need, of course, more integration and sustainability in what we are doing. And of course, I think that it has been raised by Reverend, accountability. Thank you so much for this time. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diop. Thank you, Nafissatou, for giving us those challenges, bringing us some opportunities also, some strategies, especially the strategies at global, regional, and local level. These are some highlights that we are motivating people to discuss and to bring their own experiences using the chat, please. And also for tweeting and other kind of social media, please look after the chat and you have some orientation there. Now we are continuing our reflection with UN Women's participation. We are calling Lopa Banerjee to be with us. Thank you, Lopa, for being available for us. You are the Director of Civil Society Division at UN Women. We are working a lot together already with ACT Alliance Gender Program, and UN Women, and especially with you, Lopa. We are so happy to have you in this panel, and we are eager to listening to your contribution, your reflections, and how you are always challenge us as faith organizations to work together and to be in partnership with UN Women, with UNFPA, or with other civil society spaces to build gender justice for all genders. Welcome, Lopa. The floor is yours. You have 10 minutes to discuss with us. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Elaine. My greetings to all of you who are participating in this very important conversation. My greetings to all my ACT Alliance colleagues and partners. Many greetings to you, Nafissatou. We work with UNFPA very closely, and we are deeply privileged to be doing that, to be working in solidarity with all of you. Let me also offer my my wishes for all of your health and well-being, and I hope that all of you and your loved ones are safe and well. 25 years ago in Beijing in 1995, almost 40,000 people came together to adopt what is seen as the blueprint for gender equality, building off what had gone before it, which was the International Convention on Population Development, building off ICPD. In 1995, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action was adopted as the blueprint for achieving gender equality. That was 25 years ago. And it was believed when women from all over the world came together with, and there were not that many men, but in the subsequent years, men and women joined together to implement this blueprint for gender equality. 25 years later, in 2020, this was meant to be the year for the big assessment, celebration moment for gender equality. Let me share with you some statistics for where we are 25 years later after Beijing on the issue of ending violence against women and girls. In 1995, 1 in 4 girls, children, child marriage. In 1995, the statistics for child marriage were 1 in 4. Today, 25 years later, the statistics for child marriage are approximately 1 in 5. So the decline in child marriage in 25 years has been from 1 in 4 to 1 in 5. 12 million girls marry before the age of 18 every year. The percentage of adolescent girls aged 15 to 19 who have undergone FGM in 31 countries 25 years ago was 47%. Today, it's 34%. Digital spaces, if we look at the violence, this is a new form of violence. In the European Union, 1 in 10 women reported to have experienced cyber harassment since the age of 15. Among adolescents and youth aged 18 to 29, this share is as high as 1 in 5. Let me turn to the overall issue of ending of violence. In the previous 12 months before COVID, so at the beginning of 2020, so the 12 months prior, in the previous 12 months at the beginning of this year, 243 million women and girls aged 15 to 49 across the world had been subject to sexual or physical violence by an intimate partner. That is 1 in 5 women and girls. since the outbreak of COVID, that is in these months that we have seen, in these 7 months that we have seen, that has gone up by 30% across the world. In many countries, 20%, in some countries, 40%, and the average has been across countries, 30%. And we know that this is the report, our statistics tell us at this point in time that 40%, we have underreporting of violence at the levels of 40% of women underreport violence. So this is where we are in terms of where we are with one of the most egregious violations of women and girls' human rights. When women do not have the security of their own bodies, when home, which is meant to be the space of safety and security, becomes the most dangerous place for women and girls to be. In April of this year, 90 countries declared a lockdown across the world. In recent months, and then we opened up, and in recent months, a second wave of cases has mobilized a second wave of lockdowns. And so now we have billions of people and sheltering at home and working from home and living in homes. And the reality today is that between 1995 and 2020, there has been a huge progress in legislation, in policies to end violence against women and girls. We have seen the normative framework to end violence against women and girls go up. But it behooves us at this point in time to ask ourselves, what is it that we have not been doing right? What is it that we have not been doing enough of? That we are in a position today where, based on already epidemic levels of violence, in 7 months, we have seen a pandemic of violence. All of us who have been working on this for all of these years, and faith-based organizations have been working on this for many, many years. Together with the UN, we have great examples of work that we have done together that has been successful. We have great examples of structures and frameworks where we join forces. But clearly, what we are doing is falling abysmally short. We are at a moment of opposites. Today, an expression of love is to stay away from your near and dear ones. To keep our loved ones safe, we have to adopt social distancing. To keep our loved ones and our communities safe, we need to isolate and stay at home rather than meet in community spaces. The ways in which we think and operate as human beings in society has undergone a change, and we have adapted to that. We have done that. This idea of opposites, of the fact that we are hunkering down, we are retreating into isolation, But through that isolation, we are acting in solidarity across the world. Because what is very clear is that building back better and differently from COVID means that nobody will go it alone. That the focus on solidarity, the focus on global cooperation, the focus on communities coming together is at the front and center. What COVID has done is that it has both illuminated and exacerbated the systemic flaws that have held our societies captive to inequality, discrimination, and violence. We have known for all these years that cultures in society promote violence. We have known this. And we are seeing now that it is those cultures, that the violence has not gone up in the streets in this time. This 30% increase has not been in the streets. In fact, in the streets, we have seen people, where people have mobilized in the streets, we have seen them coming together in solidarity. The violence has gone up in the homes. And so I want to ask us about the voice, the strength, the networks, the power that faith-based organizations have in communities, where they command not just goodwill, but where they command people's loyalties, where they command people's, where they serve people's well-being, the role that faith-based organizations and faith leaders can play. And this brings me to the Secretary General's strategy. The Secretary General has called, UN Women has called this increase in violence a shadow pandemic. You are calling it the other pandemic. This discussion is the other pandemic. A pandemic is something that as we are seeing, it is widespread and it requires transformative, radical solutions. We are behaving in our lives now for our own safety and for the safety of our loved ones. We are behaving radically. That idea, and we have learned how to behave radically, that is what we need to bring into the work that we are doing, where we need to re-examine. We need to turn a laser sharp focus on what it is that we have been doing wrong or not enough of. The Secretary General has called for his strategy, this accelerated implementation strategy on ending violence. There are two key focuses. One, accelerate concrete policy response to gender-based violence in the context of COVID. Two, promote zero tolerance of gender-based violence across all spheres of society everywhere. Zero tolerance means that we need to be talking loud, we need to be doing more, and promoting zero tolerance in communities has to become the front and center piece of work of faith-based organizations working on this. What does it mean to promote zero tolerance? If in 25 years of work that faith-based organizations have done on ending violence, we are at a stage today where it is a pandemic, then what does it mean to promote zero tolerance? How do we need to work? There are 4 legs to the Secretary General's strategy to end violence. prioritize funding for a minimum package of essential services that includes GBV prevention and stimulus packages, make flexible funding available for women and for women's rights organizations that are working on this, and prioritize funding for GBV prevention in the global humanitarian response plan. 2, prevent. Declare national zero tolerance policy for GBV with a concrete action plan in place, and launch a COVID-19 behavior change social mobilization campaign. On both of these, the role of faith-based organizations is central. Number 3, respond. Undertake explicit measures so that services for survivors of GBV are maintained as essential during COVID-19 lockdowns, including ensuring a continuum of essential criminal justice response, and ensure that minimum essential services are maintained and adopted where they are non-existent. And 4, collect data for the improvement of GBV services and programs. The role of faith-based organizations, faith-based actors, and in collaboration with the UN to activate decision makers for public mobilization for positive change. These 2 points are central to the work going forward. UN Women has called for GBV services to be essential. Faith-based organizations are working widely in humanitarian spaces now as COVID response. This has to be the front and center. We cannot emerge from COVID untransformed. We cannot emerge from COVID saying that the pandemic of gender-based violence was minimally affected. We would be betraying our generation and the generations to come if we did not use this moment to look at the ways in which we need to work differently, work radically, think differently, and work in a different modality with a different level of ambition and a different level of definition of success. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lopa. In the theological and church language, we would call you a prophetic voice calling our action. All this that you called us to do, these 4 legs that you are renaming and calling these 4 legs of actions, and especially 2 main possibilities that are in our hands that you are calling us to do, is to act in solidarity and work in cooperation, is something that faith communities it's part of the mandate of faith communities to be in solidarity, to act in solidarity, to work in cooperation, coming together, even in times when we are not allowed to come physically together. How can faith communities, churches, congregations serve as a space to bring people together to speak loudly as you called us to speak? I would like to thank you very much, Lopa, for this call, for these words, those words of prophetic words that you are addressing to us and that you are provoking in us as faith organizations, and the responsibility as faith organizations and faith leaders to work in these difficult and challenging times. I would like to call if Dora Arce Valentin is in the room. Reverend Dora, are you available? She's speaking from Cuba, and her internet was falling down 5-10 minutes before we start the meeting. I think she's not in the room now. I would like then to open for some discussions, something that was not yet addressed, not by our theologian, Reverend Lilana Casper and Lopa and Nafissatou until now, was that thing that we are calling the elephant in the room. We know that faith and faith communities, faith groups are active actors in transformation of gender-based violence. But we also know that faith can have a dangerous connection in building limitation for women. Faith has been part of backlash in several spaces. Faith can be a call for inaction for women, inaction for faith leaders to address gender-based violence, negating the situation, or even calling to be comfortable with that situation of violence. Faith can be, sacred text can be read in a very fundamentalist way, calling women to obey, calling women to be silent and to suffer, in now giving the status of suffering as a salvation status. So how do we deal with those backlashes? Another question that came from the floor was regarding the cultural dimension and how faith and culture are interconnected and rooted deeply in patriarchy, and how then to address what is culture and what is faith in order to overcome situation of faith, of gender-based violence. Another question that came from the room, from the chat, was regarding the need to work, it was stressed already a lot, the need to work in partnership with academy and with different actors. And someone said, changing the law is not enough. Changing only the law is not enough. We need to work in a variety of strategies to change culture, to change those deeply rooted attitudes and stereotypes regarding women and men and regarding all genders. So how to address those those possibilities of changing in a more broader way is another question. I'm opening the questions to all of you now and giving a round of 5 minutes only to the three speakers, because we haven't had the opportunity to have Reverend Dora with us. And one question also came, and it might be addressed to Reverend Lilana. How to address the culture of silence that is normal in churches and in faith communities, especially regarding religious violence, especially regarding the violence done in the name of theology, in the name of religion, by religious leaders, being religious leaders or religious people, faith people, acting in violence using faith as a strategy to act against, in violence against women. I will open the floor again. 5 minutes, we are now getting shorter to the time. Really a kind of an overview regarding these questions, and I will start shortly then with Reverend Lilana. Lilana, are you available in the room?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think it's quite daunting if we listen to the statistics around gender-based violence and what is happening in the whole world. Sometimes we think it's just happening here by us, but I think to address the issue on the culture of silence, especially silence around religious violence, it starts really by speaking out about. It starts with finding the courage, even if it's in a small group. It doesn't have to be in big platforms, but maybe in a small group. It starts with empowering, it starts with educating, and it starts with raising awareness to say, are you even aware that violence is also religious? that within the church, within the faith community, we have violence. And it is also about reinterpreting the scripture, re-looking the scripture, reusing the scripture, interpreting scripture with different lenses to say, what does this text really mean? And many times I think the opportunity to do that is not created by the church. Sometimes the space to have this kind of conversations are not created by the church. And I think it is important for us to try and create those spaces, whether it is in the women's groups, whether it is in the youth groups, especially if we look at prevention of gender-based violence. Maybe we need to start focusing more on Christian education, on the Sunday school, and on the youth. I think for me it goes to the same way with the question about the deep cultural embeddedness of what it means to be a man, of what it means to be a woman, of what it means to be married, to be a couple, the social understandings, the religious understandings, the cultural understandings that goes with this. How will we ever change it? How will we ever make a breakthrough? It starts by changing our perceptions, and it starts with us in the house, it starts with us in the church, it starts in the Sunday school. Because by the time children are 16 years old, trying to teach them something new, trying to teach them new norms and new cultures and new understandings becomes so difficult. So maybe we need to look at starting at Sunday school and asking ourselves, what is the world that we want to see? And start creating that world through education and awareness. But starting for me, I think in the Sunday school. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lilana. Thank you so much for your inspiring words again. Nafissatou, are you in the room? Would you like to have also some reaction to some of the questions from the floor in 5 minutes? Yes, thank you. You need to unmute yourself. Thank you. You are muted again. Sorry.
No, it's not me. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for raising the elephant in the room. I think that's really, you know, for UNFPA, working particularly in two areas of violence, of gender-based violence, which is, you know, addressing female genital mutilation and addressing child marriage particularly. So I will just talk about those two areas, which of course, you know, the United Nations are committed to reach zero by 2030. And Lopa, my colleague from UN Women, has already provided statistics on child marriage and how in 25 years progress has been made, but very slow progress has been made. I will add my voice to Lopa statistics on child marriage to say that in for female genital mutilation, those progress also, you know, have been really slow. And we have seen that in, you know, in about 30 years, if we look at the data at global level, we have moved from 41% of, you know, globally, you know, in countries where we do have those data of cases of female genital mutilation to 30% of cases of female genital mutilation, the prevalence rate at global level. So that means that, you know, 10%, 10% have been, you know, you know, the progress is about 10% between in 30 years. So it's very slow. And of course, while we are seeing some countries where the practice of female genital mutilation is going, you know, down very quickly, there is a lot of other countries where it is not moving. And when we look actually at one of the, you know, major accelerator of eliminating female genital mutilation is really, the religion and the faith-based engagement, the church's engagement, or the religious, Muslim religious scholars engagement that is making a lot of difference. So what I want to say here is that, at the contrary, talking about the elephant in the room, we have seen over the past decades, particularly, that groups of, faith-based organization and the religious leaders and all have, adopted and used some of the religious scripture and text to justify that violence against girls, to say that this is a religious requirement, and to find some scripture in the text, in the holy text, to justify this, and this practice. So I think that those are, very important area where, the partnership with faith-based organization, have not been really we haven't succeeded in moving forward all together in that vision that this is a violence against girls and women. This is creating, suffering. This is against most of the religious texts who actually are protected and promoting peace, promoting love, promoting healthy behavior. And that's actually, this is completely counterproductive and not beneficial for the communities. So it's very challenging to, enter into, that dialogue. And you have two camps who actually are using the same text and saying that there is nowhere in the Bible, in the Quran and other texts, any justification for that type of violence. And then the other camp who is finding that, yes, this is, on the contrary, recommended, and who are preaching, to communities, to women, to men, to families, the fact that this violence should continue, and recognize, and not recognizing that this is a violence. So my point is that, your elephant in the room is very, very big in those areas of harmful practices, child marriage and female genital mutilation. And we are facing a lot of difficulty, even if support has been made, Al-Azhar University and other groups, to completely de-link, to create that, argument and those documents and advocacy to show that there is no justification, there is no rationale, and we shouldn't continue to support that kind of practice. So I just want to say that in terms of what needs to be done, I think that I don't know how to kind of reconciliation, should happen between what we can call those two camps, using the same text and having, two different positions. But this is a big challenge. And we, as the United Nations, we continue, of course, to support the group that is promoting the zero cases of child marriage and female genital mutilation on any type of violence, give them platform to, speak out, encourage, the integration within Bible schools and other preaches and Dara, those Quranic schools, etc. from the beginning, trying to infiltrate also the training of those people, because they are trained somewhere. There is a lot of schools, where they're trained. For Muslim, for example, in West Africa, a lot of them are trained in Morocco. So going to that source of where the training is taking place to ensure that, those kind of issue and thematic are going to be, discussed and analyzed. And then I just want to add that one other element that we found very important is women in faith. And so I'm very happy to see Reverend here. And I think that this is also an area where the multilateral organization that we are should really continue to support and invest, or, you know, and provide the platform and the partnership for women who are really leading also all these worlds of faith-based organization, and who are really scholars and preacher and all, and try to support them, because we have found that we have a better response from them, a better understanding, a lot of courage to address those issues in public, and to make it clear and strong that girls and women need to be protected from gender-based violence. So this is really for us an area that needs to grow, you know, that partnership with women in faith. And I would like to really, you know, encourage, and if there is some ideas that we are missing, I think that it's also an opportunity, your discussion today, to tell us, you know, how you are seeing that a stronger partnership and a stronger, you know, and a critical mass of women in faith, women's leaders in faith-based organization, in religion and all, to really stand up with us and, you know, address the issue of gender-based violence. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Nafissatou. Thank you very much. We are going directly to Lopa. Lopa, 5 minutes, because our time is running out now. Thank you, Lopa.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to respond to a few questions also on the chat. I'll talk to the issue of pushback that you talked about, or rather you spoke about it as, you know, the elephant in the room. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm also going to talk about one of the questions that was asked in the chat about the focus of UN Women for during COVID and the renewed focus on gender-based violence. What are some of the other issues of gender equality? And where can you find the statistics that I shared? So just a very simple answer to the last one. The statistics that I shared are all available. These are public statistics. They are available on UN Women's website. They're also available through the Beijing Plus 25 report that UN Women did at the beginning of this year. And it's so all of those statistics are there. They're also available in the Secretary General's policy brief on ending violence that you would have seen, and they are part of the Secretary General's strategy for ending gender-based violence that he called for, and all of those statistics are available on UN Women's website, as well as on his website, where he focuses on the policies for this. In terms of the elephant in the room and the whole issue around pushback, I want to say, you know, Nafissatou just spoke about, you know, the sluggish progress. We've been talking for years and years and years. All of us have been talking about sluggish progress. But today with COVID, we are actually in a space of reversal. It is no longer about sluggish progress. We are now in reversal mode. And unless we do something about that, about recognizing that we are in reversal, and therefore, what do we need to do that is different? So in that context, this idea of religion being used to promote discrimination, this is not coincidental. This is a long and strategic move by not only religious leaders and particular faith groupings who seek political and economic and social power. So therefore, it is a coming together of religious leaders, certain religious groupings, together with political authoritarian leaders, non-democratic systems. It's a coming together. It's a very strategic alignment. So, and that comes together to push back on democracy overall, and at its core, women's rights, and including gender-based violence, because then gender-based violence is seen as a domestic private issue. So as part of this strategic pushback, for example, we are now seeing enormous pushback against the Istanbul Convention in many parts of Eastern Europe, Turkey, and so on. They are coming. This pushback is on legislation that is in place to end violence against. The Istanbul Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls is legislation. And it is about the implementation, it is about the expression of this legislation in national laws in these countries. And there is pushback against that, saying that this legislation is contrary to family values, and so this promotion of family, a conservative, regressive notion of family, and that is being promoted through the combination of faith leaders, religion that is promoting a certain, and political authoritarianism coming together. So it is a very strategic grouping. And so our response to it also has to be strategic. There has to be a strategic political alignment and a political strategy development of progressive faith leaders, faith organizations, feminist faith leaders, those that believe in gender justice, a political strategy development of this. The Secretary General's gender-based violence strategy right now is a political engagement strategy, because we need, if we're looking at addressing these systems which are promoting these patriarchal cultures of violence, there are two things. One is the political advocacy and the political strategy, and therefore strategically look at who will be allies and what will be the deliverables against this political strategy. And then the second, which is in the congregations, to be able to create cultures of equality, real hard work happening in churches, in mosques, in temples, and in places of worship, to look at creating cultures of equality. So it is both of these things. And finally, to the question of UN, what is UN Women focusing on at this point in time, or what has come through as COVID? Actually, three really important things. One is the fact that we have seen an acceleration of violence. And so what UN Women is calling for is to make all violence services essential services. This means that shelters, hotlines, etc., that have been closed down as a response to COVID, or that have been transformed into health facilities, need to remain as violence prevention services. Churches and local churches and local religious spaces need to be converted to support as violence shelters. This has already been done in some countries. So this is a very specific piece of work that can be done by faith-based organizations. Number two, we have seen a massive increase in the care burden. So looking at the care economy as a critical way forward, building back better, is a central piece. And third, women's voice and representation. 70% of frontline workers are women. The women are at the front line of COVID recovery. They are not on the table in terms of decision-making about building back better from COVID. Therefore, representation of women in building back better from COVID, going to Nafissatou's point about representation of women in leadership in faith-based organizations, looking at intergenerational young leaders together with older leaders, women of faith, exercising leadership, creating the space for that leadership, seeding space so that women may be leaders, and therefore their contribution to building back better. These are concrete strategies for how to move back, how to build back better from this moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lopa. We go straight directly to listening to our last speaker who will close our panel. We have been working together with SIDA, with our organization from Sweden, who is giving support to this work in ACT Alliance in promoting gender justice and working on gender justice. We request now Dr. Josephine Sandquist to be with us and to give us the final and closing remarks of this event. Josephine, are you in the panel? Yes, you are here. Welcome, Josephine. And thank you for waiting and listening to us. You have now the time to close in a few minutes. We are going a little bit over the time.
Okay, what's the limit for me? How many are we? Up to 5 past or?
Five, up to 5, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to say that it's a great honor to be part of this roundtable today. And for us as SIDA, we work jointly with ACT Alliance because we don't only consider ourselves as a sponsor, as a donor, but we also see that this is a partnership. And we have joint aims and goals with the Global Gender Justice Campaign. So before I start, I would just like to give some greetings from our Director General, Karin Jämtin, but also from Karin Eriksson, who is working on the partnership more directly, and also Lisa Mossberg. I will try to focus my concluding remarks around 2 main issues that have come up in this roundtable as a framing for my address. First of all, why is it so important and crucial to work with faith-based actors to overcome gender-based violence, but also to achieve gender justice more broadly? And secondly, what are the possibilities to increase collaboration and to build a stronger global multi-faith platform? And as SIDA, we often tend to use acronyms, but for those of you who are not familiar with us, it stands for the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency. And we are implementing part of the feminist foreign policy of the Swedish government. We were actually the first country in the world to launch a feminist foreign policy. And that is because we saw the urgency around not only gender-based violence, but also the importance of pushing for women, peace and security, for pushing for the role of women in decision-making, in politics, for economic empowerment. And as part of this feminist foreign policy, we are working around 3 R's, which represents women's representation, the rights of women and girls, but also resources, which is crucial also to look at economic empowerment, etc. And apart from the larger framing of our feminist foreign politics, we also have a strategy for global gender justice. And it's from this strategy that we are partnering with the ACT Alliance around the global campaign. So in this roundtable, I can see a lot of familiar faces from around the globe. And it's inspiring for me that you are continuing and you're not giving up. I have had the privilege over the last years to work with a lot of multi-faith platforms around the globe. And what I noticed and what we noticed from SIDA over the last month is that you have faced an enormous burden as faith actors. You are in many ways acting as the first respondent and the first line for the shadow pandemic, for the second pandemic as we are addressing it in this roundtable. And many of you as faith actors may not have gained extra resources to step up and to handle the severe situation that women and girls are facing, but because you are offering a space, a sanctuary for communities, for local communities, you are the direct first respondents. And of course, in this situation, we have to be flexible in development cooperation to see how we can draw resources and stronger cooperation in this. And coming back to the first question on why is it so important to work with faith actors? Rudemal opened the roundtable by talking about democratic backsliding and pushbacks and fundamentalists and the trends we see that religious identities are being politicized. At the same time, we see faith actors coming out as champions for gender justice. And in this, we have to really build bridges and to bring progressive faith voices and actors together as a counter force to democratic backsliding, but also to trends of fundamentalists. When we look at surveys, for example, Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life or World Value Survey, we can clearly see that issues around gender justice, sexuality, and gender-based violence are often based on morality and ethics. And statistics shows, for example, on the African continent, that around 80 to 98% consider issues around abortion, homosexuality, a morality issue, which is based on faith principles and interpretations, theological interpretations of sacred texts and principles. So faith is clearly an integrated part of identity, but we also see that religious leaders are influential, of course, in many societies. And if we are to challenge stigma and taboos and to break the silence when it comes to gender-based violence, we must work with duty bearers. And traditionally, we have often seen that, of course, legal duty bearers are perceived as the primary duty bearers, parliaments, governments, etc. But with democratic backsliding, we have seen more and more so that moral duty bearers, religious and cultural leaders, are holding a very important function in society. And if we want to transform norms, we have to work with them effectively. And there in this roundtable, many of you have raised the importance on theology, supporting theological institutions, but also to work with contextual interpretation. And I have, for example, had experience from my previous positions to work on the Tamar campaign and how to use contextual Bible studies and contextual Quran studies to see how we can find effective tools for norm transformation. I will post on the chat here an article from our website on innovative faith partnerships and how we have tried to facilitate for global capacity development in this field. The second question that has been circulating here is maybe to see how can we increase collaborations. We have heard from both UN Women and UNFPA that there are efforts to increase collaboration and to consolidate. What we see here is that it's only 10 years left for the 2030 agenda. And with the principle of leaving no one behind, we're not there where we're supposed to be at this point. And I really liked what was initially mentioned in the roundtable, that we tend to work in silos, not only faith actors on one side and secular actors on one side, but even within faith actors themselves, there is a separation between Anglican, Lutheran, Pentecostal, Shia Muslim, Sunni Muslim, different forms of faith groups within. And we really need to facilitate for these fruitful partnerships and arenas where we can also have more of faith and secular partnerships, and also more of effective UN faith partnerships. But also as a government, we see that for normative dialogue, for the global normative dialogue, we really need to take joint hands and defend rights together. So finally, as my last word, I would say, what are the key outcomes from me from this is that we need to consolidate, we need to unite. And in this roundtable, we can see that what unites us as a government, as UN agencies, as faith-based actors and civil society is more than what brings us apart. And we have to clearly stick to that so we can effectively see a realization of SDG 5. And we are looking forward as the Swedish government and Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency to continue in this partnership and to see how we can work together to fight gender-based violence and to stand up together in the times we are facing with COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josephine. Thank you so much. And we are also looking forward to continue the collaboration, increasing the collaboration, because it's, as you said, it's much beyond funding. It's also about partnership and working together and understanding, building a common understanding on gender justice. Thank you. I want to close this event saying a word of thank you, a great, great thank you to all of you, to the participants and to the speakers. This was one of our first attempts to come together. You can all put on your camera, please, that we can see each other and say goodbye. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for your ideas. We are going to continue some of the conversation using our website. There is a special place in the website. Daniela already shared our website on the chat. It's ACT Alliance and it's regarding the 16 days. So we are thanking all of you for participating. And I would like to thank a lot really to a great team of women who have been behind the scenes. Rebecca, Daniela, Anna, Francesca. Without these women, Gabriela, without this team, this great team, this event would not be possible. This team is the gender team working behind the scenes. Thank you so much. Thank you to the interpreters also that we could have in Spanish. And this is our first attempt. We are learning how to do, and we are sure that we are doing it again. Thank you so much, and stay safe. Take care of your health, and let's put in practice what we are saying, that we want to live in a society, in a community that is free from gender-based violence. Thank you very much.